I've rarely seen a single technology that is as versatile in its application than before. My first point is, yes, I think Gen AI is the big thing. And I think that Gen AI is very different than the other AI we spoke about. It is freaking hard. Training model is easy. Driving the change management, extraordinarily hard. Human behaviors. And to train those models, you need to have clean data in the cloud. So I think it's a big thing. I think it can transform the industry. I think it's way much harder than what people admit it to.
That's Tanguy Catlin, Senior Partner at McKinsey Company, and this is the future of insurance.
Tanguy, you're one of my favorite people. It's great to sit down with you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I had to come all the way to Vegas, even though we live in almost the same city, but
Almost
very close to each other.
Exactly.
I'm excited to hear some of your perspective on key things. There's a lot of hype, a lot of buzzwords going around. I'd love some guidance and some perspective on what matters, what should matter to us, and why is the timing so critical. But before that, who are you, for people who don't know?
Thank you, Bryan. Well, other than being a longtime friend of yours, I am a senior partner at McKinsey, and I have two roles. One, I serve our clients in the insurance industry, and then second, I co-lead our digital practice in North America, which encompasses our client service around technology, digital analytics, and delighted to be spending the next couple of minutes with you.
Well, given the perspective that you have, I'm a car guy, so I'm very curious the perspectives around mobility, and I know those are conversations that you've been having while we're here in Vegas at ITC. I want to get into Gen AI, the hashtag of the day this year, and then think longer term. But can we start with mobility? Because it's been a conversation for a few years. It feels like maybe it's getting a bit more steam, but also not. I'm curious in your perspective, and what's the conversation?
Yeah, no, thank you, Bryan. And the timing is perfect. We just had 20 executives across carriers, OEMs, regulator, tech companies. Man, to be very honest, we ended every single conversation with a vote about the future, and the vote was 50-50. But let me start maybe with a frame that I think is useful. And I will take the frame from the lens of an insurance carrier, given your audience. The auto insurance industry is decades old. Mm-hmm. And the way it was defined was based on insuring vehicles that were using combustible engines and vehicles that did not really have a lot of sensors to capture information. We have come to the conclusion that that industry, which was meant to insure those type of cars and how you repair those cars and inferring driver behaviors, is going to start declining now. It has been growing for decades. This is going to be declining. What is happening is we think it's a completely different industry that's driven by very, very different forces that is emerging now that will take care of insuring vehicles that are electric vehicles, in vehicles that have tons of sensors, so you'll be able to understand real behaviors. There will be transfer of liabilities. And for that new industry that is very small now, but that's going to be growing and replacing the old industry, we think that the winners and losers are going to be extremely different. And we are excited about that. Who those winners and losers are, we don't know yet. And this is the debate that we've just had. Happy to share some perspective. But that is, to me, the framing, which is we are at the very beginning of the game.
Yeah. Well, so two things came to mind. One is, to me, it feels like the move from horses to early internal combustion cars. And I think to other people, they may be saying, no, because those are completely different. But they're really not. It's a mode of transportation that gets you from A to B. And while this one looks the same as the one it's replacing, it's quite a different beast. It's not a dumb thing. It's highly intelligent, tons of sensors. The cost of repair is irrelevantly comparable to what was before. And now you're talking about autonomy is coming into the mix. Flying cars one day, but at least autonomy. It looks and feels the same from the outside, but it's wildly different once you get under the surface. And so that I feel like it's the same as horses to cars or bicycles to cars or something.
We see it that way. We see it as completely different. I'll frame a couple of factors you can think about, right? In the future of mobility, we anticipate about 30% of this ecosystem to be rideshare. We think that, we predict over the coming years that 50% of the vehicles will be electric vehicles. Um, we think that right now 100% of the new vehicles that are being put on the road have tons of sensors. And so the questions about one, will we see a significant change in frequency and severity?
Yeah.
It's a remarkable question, and I can frame both arguments. Second, where and how are you going to purchase your insurance? Fundamentally different.
Yeah.
Who are you going to purchase your insurance now? You know that in states where Tesla has licenses to offer its own insurance, we've seen that the pickup rate was rather significant. So it used to be that in the old world, to compete and win, and we've seen aggregation of market share year over year by the top players, you needed a big brand, you needed good data for underwriting and pricing, and you needed an effective acquisition channels.
Yeah.
In this future, those things can be outcompeted potentially by other participants. Tesla has a big brand. Those cars, OEMs, will have probably more and better data to do the underwriting. And when you want to purchase or use your insurance, you may not, you may want to have the provision of that service available right at the moment.
Yeah.
And so there are many, many questions about who's going to be winning and losing in the future.
So the other thing that I thought was when you said we don't know who the winners and losers will be, it sounds like you're sort of framing up, well, what are the characteristics that we're going to look for to say, is this someone who's positioned to win, or is their mindset maybe in a place where they'll accept the changes that are necessary to be able to compete and win, versus they're not seeing the dynamics at play, so they're not positioned for the potential?
Well, I think there are three questions. The first one is, what is the pace of change that we'll see?
Yeah.
And it is going to be slower than what I suggested in my opening remarks. The stock of cars right now is rather old and doesn't have all of the technology I'm talking about. Cars, stock of cars is between 10 and 12 years old, so it's going to take a time to replenish it. Number two, it takes about 3 years to develop a new car. So many of the cars that are coming on the market right now are still using platforms that are from a few years ago. And there is right now almost no integration between the safety features of the car and the user interface platforms that people are using. That's challenge number one. It's the stock and the replenishment of the stock. Challenge number two, to be very honest, distracted driving has been the primary reason we have not seen major improvements in frequency and severity over the last decade, while the vehicle safety features are proven to improve those dimensions. Distracted driving because of cell phone has more than overtaken the benefits. And there is no, in my opinion, light of sight of meaningful improvement in addressing distracted driving because nobody owns that problem. The OEMs don't feel it's their problem. The insurance company don't really feel it's their problems. I don't know whether the phone manufacturer think it's their problem, and the regulators are very mixed, between the ITC and others. So there is the second component. And then I think there is a third one in terms of the future is there will be bumps on the road. You've seen what happened in California with an injury, and then all of a sudden there are actions taken legislatively to pull back. So we need to be very cautious in making projections moving forward. Eventually, logically, what you will see is more partnerships. OEMs and carriers and other players coming together to really advance that mobility ecosystems. How that's going to shape, again, those are questions that are not fully answered. But fundamentally, the statement that the old world is disappearing is a true statement. And what it used to take to win is not going to be the same as what is required to win in the future, which then makes the next couple of years really, really exciting.
It is interesting to me as you look at the safety features. making things safer at the same time that other things are making it less safe, distracted
Yeah.
driving and other features, other things as well. Electric cars go really fast and
Yes.
wear through tires faster
Yes.
as
Yeah.
well. We keep solving for static problems without recognizing that the dynamic of problems, risks, etc., it's a totally dynamic, changing world. So that's a fundamentally different thing that requires sensors and real-time data, and we've not conceived of these things yet, or had to make use of them because we could get by with the old approach. It's not gonna work going forward, and I appreciate the framing that you're putting on that.
I think that's right. I also think that we are still at the stage where drivers' behaviors matter.
Yeah.
And if you are in the commercial fleet space, you work for someone who can expect you to behave a certain way,
Yeah.
can monitor how you behave,
Yeah.
and can fire you if you don't behave the right way. So we've seen very encouraging, very, very encouraging developments with commercial fleets, significant reduction in frequency, severity, etc. The problem with individual drivers is they don't have a boss.
Yeah.
When they are driving and they get, signals that their behaviors are not safe, they find it annoying, and so they switch it off.
Yeah.
And until we are able to change drivers' behaviors, I don't think we're going to see much progress.
Yeah. Well, I want to change gears. If we can't change their behaviors, I mentioned Gen AI when we were opening up. Buzzword of the day, it was blockchain before, it was drones before that. We do focus in on one word and then it becomes all we talk about. I'm curious if that's the right word, if there's a bigger conversation to be had around AI and your perspectives on AI more broadly. But I'd be remiss if I didn't bring it up because it is an important thing. And I know it's AI as a theme is something that you've focused on quite a bit. So I'm curious, what is your take on it? And is Gen AI the thing?
I'm very, very worried about being recorded and proven wrong in the future. I do think Gen AI is the thing. I don't think drones were the thing.
Yeah.
I think I may have spoken in the past. I think API were very important, were a thing at the time. I think Gen AI is the big thing. If you indulge me, I'd love to spend 1 minute to separate Gen AI from the other AI that people are talking about, because I think they are completely different categories.
Yeah, tell me.
So, AI is nothing new. It has been evolving, and it used to start with descriptive AI, and then we moved into predictive AI, and then prescriptive AI, and they were all based on certain type of analytical techniques. I think what people don't realize is Gen AI is about content creation.
Yeah.
It's a completely different game. Now, what's remarkable once you start looking into the underlying techniques supporting Gen AI is the notion that you are taking content. Let's do it in text. It's easier. You're taking a word, and you are translating this word into a vector. And the vector has information that is based on the context in which the word is used. Remember, Gen AI was used through translator for language translations where the order of the words in different languages vary. And so the quality of that vector is based on the context. The more information you can feed into those large language modeling, the better the quality of the vector.
Yeah.
But it doesn't need to be a word. It can be voice, it can be pictures, etc. And so the type of problems that you'll be able to address through Gen AI are vastly different. The techniques are vastly different. And it's brand new. I mean, it started in 2017, but honestly, it came to life through ChatGPT, which is just 1 year old.
Yeah. And already beyond its fourth version at this point.
Yes, exactly.
In just
exactly.
A year.
And when you understand the level of improvement between the ChatGPT 3 and then the 4, it's quantum steps. So here's why I believe it's a big deal. The first one is when you think about the use of technology to complement, supplement, or replace human labor, it started with replacing mechanical activities. If you go to a car factory, you don't find human building cars anymore. Those are robots.
Yeah.
I think the second one was replacing cognitive thought process. The moment you have a machine beating the world best chess player, what we never really managed to tackle is empathy. We are social creatures. In the world of insurance, when you have a claim, it's an emotional moment.
Yeah.
I need to show real empathy. The ability to read on your face right now that you're skeptical about what I'm saying, but curious about what I'm going to go to say next, etc.
Yeah.
That's very complex. This is the world where Gen AI can solve this.
Yes.
And can provide human level empathy.
Yeah.
And so when you apply to the world of insurance, we've been very surprised by the type of problems we are able to solve and the velocity at which
Yes.
we're able to bring to market. So I'll give you a couple of counterintuitive examples. One will be, you know that in this industry, rates are filed through states.
Yeah.
And there are millions of pages of filings, and nobody has ever tried to comprehend, the rating strategy in different states, real time from different carriers. I can take all of that, put it in Gen AI,
Yeah.
and I can now interrogate and say, hey, I've seen that carrier X has taken some action in the state of Ohio. What are the actions? What were the questions from the regulators? How did they get around that? And I can get that as a conversation real time.
Yeah.
That transforms product management.
Yeah.
In claims, it took forever to hire and train people, but now you can have real-time coaches that look at whether they are following the right regulatory guidance and protocols, and get people to be very effective extremely quickly. Insurers are victim, particularly in life insurance, to large legacy systems that are written in old codes, COBOL and other. I can now increase, I can translate that code into more modern languages. Talent management. I can ask 10 people to leave me a voicemail with their perspective on your performance, and I can get a synthesis that is very action-oriented to give you coaching and guidance. I've rarely seen a single technology that is as versatile in its application than before. Now, what I will say though, so my first point is, yes, I think Gen AI is the big thing.
Yeah.
And no, I don't. I think that Gen AI is very different than the other AI we spoke about. It is freaking hard. Training model is easy. Driving the change management, extraordinarily hard.
Yeah.
Human behaviors.
Yeah.
And to train those models, you need to have clean data in the cloud.
Yes.
And this industry is way behind on having clean data in the cloud. So I think it's the big thing.
Yeah.
I think it can transform the industry. I think it's way much harder than what people admit it to be.
Yeah. Well, and I think the speed of iteration of ChatGPT and how much kind of public awareness there is of that is desensitizing us to the lift that is necessary to get the real value out of it. We're talking about mobility, we're talking about Gen AI, possibilities, changes, threats, ways to navigate. But I want to go back to an initial comment you made about the product that we have.
Yes.
And I know you were talking about auto, but this is a broader thing. The indemnity offering that we have is specific to a world that no longer exists in a lot of ways. We have helicopters buzzing overhead. Yes. This is all different, right? When those policies were written, there were no such things. How do we, and the tools are different. Gen AI today, 2 years from now, will be wildly different. Why is this an important theme for carriers to think about? Do we have the right product? Are we thinking about this the right way? Should we care? And do they care? Do they care enough? Does the industry get the existential shift that's necessary in the core of what we do?
So I'm really worried about part of the industry because I observe that the industry is losing relevance. So let me illustrate my point, and then I'll tell you what I think is the antidote to that problem. I looked at the share of losses paid by carriers after major catastrophes.
Yeah.
And for the last few decades, that share has been declining.
Yeah.
And every single time there is a cat, the portion of the losses covered by the carriers has been declining.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think that this is that the carriers don't want to be involved in the insurance game. I think that they don't get the appropriate rates to be willing to offer those products and be appropriately compensated. But it is a failure for society not to be able to insure itself against cats. I see the rise of new risks. Take cybersecurity as an easy example, but there are many more: IP, geopolitical, etc. And the industry doesn't seem to be able to come up with the capacity to cover those risks. Again, there is a question on pricing behind that. I look at the share of the S&P that is represented by insurance, or even within financial services, right? Life insurance has been declining at the expense of retirement companies, asset management, etc. So I worry those are not good, healthy metrics. So how do you change that paradigm? I think that now in the 21st century, with the data that we have, with the technology that we have, with the porous ecosystems that we have, there is an opportunity for carriers to move from protection to prevention. Right now, you expect your insurance company to pay a claim and get you back on your feet when something happens. I think there is a massive unlock if the carriers are the folks who are helping you avoid the problem. I mean, the insurance industry invented the sprinkler. Right? And so if you ask my perspective, I think there is a lot more than carriers could do in trying to think about prevention rather than protection.
I had that conversation with the carrier, several carriers on the claims side, and what they kept coming to is, but that's not a claims problem. That's a not claims problem because there's no claim if we do that. So claims can't pay for it. And in commercial lines, there might be risk prevention, loss control, whatever terms you use for it. There's a budget to set these things. But in personal lines, we don't have that. So then I see carriers say, yes, we understand we should be doing that. We see that there's solutions to do it, but I don't have a budget to own that, so we're not going to do it. And it concerns me because it's like you've recognized there's a viable solution. The economics work out, and because you can't figure out what cost center to stick it into, you just shrug your shoulders and move away. And I know that's a microcosm of a single issue with select carriers, but I think it's a bigger statement about the mentality you're saying is our relevance in question, and do we fully understand that, or are we getting caught up in our bonus is tied to surplus growth, so we can't do these other things because that would take surplus and then we don't get bonuses, whether that's just explicit or an implicit subconscious decision-making driver. I think we have a number of these things at play, and we're not necessarily ready to get out of our own way, and I'd like to see that shift. I don't know if that's my take. I don't know if that's what you're saying with this, or if you think there's other things driving it, or.
So I'm observing the same. We are here in Vegas at ITC. I'm also talking to a bunch of brilliant people who believe that they can go and disrupt that paradigm. So my hope is that the support of investors, the smart, insurtech disruptors, mature carriers who are willing to partners. And then I think what's also really new, Bryan, is big tech is back in the action. So if you go back a couple of years ago, and you and I have discussed it many times, there was a notion that at some point that insurtech would completely disrupt carriers, and that has not happened, and that will not happen. There is not a single insurtech right now that is outperforming the best-in-class carrier. Then there was the fear that the big techs will come, and I think what the big techs have learned is it's hard to be an insurer. I think now we are in a mature place where carriers are saying, I want to partner with insurtech because they bring something valuable, and insurtech says, I don't need to win the whole prize. I'm happy to have my share. But we talk about Gen AI. To get Gen AI, you need clean data in the cloud. Big tech are the cloud provider. Big tech own many of those large language models, etc. And so my hope is that now you have the power of 1 + 1 + 1, right? You have big tech, insurtech, carrier. And if there is enough funding and capital provided, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that this industry can reinvent itself.
I'm always excited for a note that ends on collaboration. So I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for you spending some time with me today.
It's great seeing you. Thanks for having me, Bryan.
Thanks, Tanguy.
Cheers.